even getting him in a voice call with his webcam on. This is notable because Wayne had already been caught in 2019 and was on probation until 2023. In spite of this, no action was taken after Max had sent his evidence to the authorities. This leads Max to direct his audience to harass the Butler County Sheriff's Office. He even calls out the sheriff by name.
After submitting everything to the police months ago, including evidence we are not allowed to show you, we still have not heard back from them, and Wayne is still active. Let Sheriff Richard Jones know you do not appreciate them. In the event that they do not make an adequate response, there really is no other option, is there, children?
I don't know what this was supposed to achieve, but it was unsuccessful. Wayne is allegedly still active to this day, evident by Max's own subreddit. It should have been easier given that Wayne was already in the system for exchanging with a 12-year-old, but as Max points out, his investigations didn't exactly have a great track record.
With every report I have ever made, there seems to be an overwhelming silence from those we call authorities, and it has all ever amounted to only a few arrests, which does not even guarantee an incarceration, as wise men once said. The police.
Nevertheless, this was all overshadowed by the chapters that preceded it. The video begins with an update to Pick a Side YouTube, with much of it directed towards his critics. Max first parodies Tommy C's stream with a segment called Mommy Z.
Hi, you're live on the air.
I pick the files.
Wow. Wow. Okay. I absolutely agree. Thank you so much for calling in.
I am a...
So without further ado, let's get right into the video.
Max then shows excerpts of his reaction before implying that having Vito and Mr. Girl on his show meant he supported PDF files. Bear in mind, Mr. Girl only called into Tommy's show for about 15 minutes. Rather than call Tommy out by name, he does what a non-clout chaser would do and refers to him by his sub count.
What I did not foresee, however, was when you accidentally aligned with actual files along the way. Please teach me your ways, washed up commentary channel number 46,853. Anyway, I can see a simple conversation is asking for too much when you're busy inviting more pedophiles onto your show.
Now, Max is sure to clarify he wasn't calling Tommy a PDF file, just Vito, apparently.
And that's not me calling you a pedophile number 46853. That's me calling you stupid. I would never threaten you.
But his audience got a different message. It's one thing to accuse a platform of protecting PDF files, it's another to accuse a small streamer in front of your entire creep hunting audience. Tommy was flooded with comments accusing him of being a creep. He responded in a stream calling Max an egomaniac before revealing something he had never talked about. Tommy was in fact a CSA survivor himself and had every right to criticize Max for the way he was making videos.
I'm a victim of child molestation. I was molested by my babysitter, and I got lucky. I had a couple drinks with my neighbor across the street a couple years later when I was a teenager, and he full-on got raped by the same guy. Neither of us had the balls, because we were children, to say anything, and by then it was just too late. So I get really, really upset when stuff like this happens. Don't believe me? Think I'm just saying it? No, Dave knows about it. He's done about it for like 10 years. And he's one of my closest army buddies. And if you want to sit there and deny me, which I don't care, say that I'm making shit up, why would a guy like me running a comedy show just open him up to some the most offensive, which I fully expect, no jokes that I'm going to get? I don't care. I care more about people not taking you seriously than making fun of me getting molested as a kid.
Max had basically re-victimized Tommy by subjecting him to the harassment of his fans, who were now baselessly calling a CSA survivor a creep. Max never responded to this publicly beyond a half-hearted attempt to squash the beef on his live stream.
I don't want to hold dirt on anyone. Like, even people like Tommy C. I honestly just wanted to, like, you know, clap back. Because, you call me a pedo on stream. I think I deserve to, slap you a little bit. I don't want to, like, fight him forever. I mean, I think he's very funny. I don't think he's a bad person. I just think sometimes the way he covers stuff feels like he takes everything at face value and just runs with that. And I would like him to be more thorough, because I think he has a lot of potential, because he is very charismatic and he has an audience who would die for him. And that reminds me a lot of myself.
Oh, and I haven't even mentioned the QR codes yet. Yeah, so Max would hide QR codes throughout the video with messages for Tommy C. In one of them, Max admits to cherry-picking the clips of Vito and Mr. Girl. Don't let this small section of the live stream fool you. I cherry-picked it, but that's not why I'm showing you this, even though it is peculiar why he treats files more friendly than someone who hunts them. The reason I'm showing you this is because hashtag 46853 has a pattern of giving a platform for creeps to defend themselves. In another of them, he says something that will have very strange implications as we progress further into the video. I've said this before publicly many different times. I don't do this for the kids. I do this because I like hurting people. On July 23rd, 2023, a channel by the name of Magnetar released an almost hour-long expose on Max. It served to platform some of Max's ex-girlfriends who had come out against him. The names featured would be more fleshed-out stories from Lucy and Olivia, who had voiced their accusations prior, in addition to a new victim, Haley, Magnetar's girlfriend. Haley is the only one we'll be discussing at length, as her story appears to be the most credible. It's also unique in that she never dated Max, alleging a one-sided obsession that spanned several years. She gives us quite a bit of history on Max, starting all the way back in 2013. They met in high school and were close friends. Haley claims the first red flag came after she mentioned her sister's upcoming birthday party. Max apparently showed up uninvited, with Haley unaware he even knew where she lived. At said party, he wouldn't engage with anyone besides Haley, standing well away from everyone. This led her to cover for him by lying and say she had, in fact, invited him. Haley recalls that Max wanted to become a firefighter after school and spoke about it often. It was apparently some kind of code word, which he refused to explain.
After prom, Max started texting me more than usual. He kept saying he wanted to be a firefighter and that his calling was to be a firefighter. And of course, I would ask him why he wanted to go into this profession, but Max would deflect and not tell me directly. He also said that firefighter was a code word for something else. I asked him several times over the next, few months what it meant, but he would just laugh at me and change the subject.
In August of 2014, Haley got her driver's license and suggested he stop by after work. He took her up on this and they drove around town. Eventually, she took him to an inlet near a lake where they sat and talked for a bit. Max brought up his dream of becoming a firefighter, which led Haley to ask about it again. But this time, he simply handed her a notebook. Haley opened it at home and found, allegedly, a violent plan to get rid of her actual boyfriend.
Most of the notes were similar to diary entries, like what happened that day, things like that. And then he started describing, our friendship, like him and I. He talked about how I lit up his day, how he looked forward to seeing me, and all of those things. He then brought up Dustin, who was, again, my boyfriend, and how he didn't deserve to have me. He had written out a whole plan on how he would get him out of the picture. I don't fully remember the exact details and don't want to speculate how he would have done it from memory, but I remember it being thorough and violent, and it freaked me out so much that I just, threw the book down.
She tried to distance herself, which should have been easy as she began attending university, but Max was persistent in her DMs, with Haley claiming she went along with it so as not to set him off. This led him to show up at her dorm room, an hour-long drive, despite never telling him exactly where she was staying.
One night he showed up to my dorm room. I hadn't told him which dorm I was staying in, so it was strange. He found out where I was. When I asked him how he knew where I was, he laughed and never told me.
Haley broke up with her boyfriend Dustin that September and spoke about it to Max. This led him to try and reconnect further, which she was advised against by her current boyfriend Anthony, also known as Magnetar. Anthony told her to ignore him and cut off all contact. She refused, figuring she owed it to Max to let him off easy. Then one day, Max claimed to have arranged a meeting for her with her sister. It was for networking purposes as they were in the same line of work. Haley agreed, and Max calls her to tell her they booked a hotel room. He drives her to the hotel, where she finds out the meeting was a ruse, and he actually booked the room for the two of them. This is where she alleges Max trapped her, disallowing her from leaving and dismissing any excuses she threw at him.
He was standing in the doorway and wouldn't let me walk past him. Anytime I tried to get out the door, he would hold my shoulders or my waist and he would just stop me. Honestly, I can't remember all of what happened that night, as I've done all I could to forget and move past this memory for years, but I do know that I was scared and that I was held against my will for hours. I remember being on my period and asking if we could go to the store so I could get tampons, seeing this as a way to get out of the room, but Max said no. I ended up sleeping without a tampon or a pad that night because he wouldn't let me leave. I remember telling him that I was talking to a new guy and that we had plans to watch a movie that night. Max said that I was lying about the movie date and continued talking about his mom and his sister. I eventually was crying so hard that I just fell asleep. I woke up to Max's hand in my shirt. He was rubbing my back all the way down to where my shorts were, and his fingers were inside of my shorts. I rolled over and asked him what he was doing. He just kind of smiled, super creepy, and said that he was watching me sleep.
Max says she was finally allowed to leave in order to attend her chemistry class. After this, she didn't respond to any calls, texts, or emails for several weeks. He kept asking if she was okay, how her day was, but she didn't respond. Then, in December of 2014, she noticed his car parked outside her workplace. Haley called Anthony to pick her up, to which he told Max to leave them alone. This made Max so upset that he apparently started accusing him of taking her away from him. There was another instance where he showed up on campus, only to learn she was on winter break, followed by a couple of months where he actually left her alone. This is around when Max joined the military, doing basic training in Arizona. Max returned in March of 2015, sending vague and ominous messages.
Max didn't reach out to me for a month or so after this. He said he was in the military and doing basic training in Arizona. I told him that he should focus on that, and he didn't respond, so I figured that would be the last I'd ever hear from him because I was pretty blunt about it. He started messaging me again in March of 2015 with really vague and ominous messages like, be safe, don't believe what they say. Anthony was also getting messages such as, keep her safe and you don't realize who you have, but we just ignored them and assumed Max was on his shit again.
Then, Max sent Anthony a message early one morning with a link to a video of him harming himself with the message, thanks Anthony. The video was also posted to Anthony's Facebook where he tagged himself. Anthony called for a wellness check on him, which ultimately led him to be discharged from the US Army.
Obviously, Max would survive this attempt, and he and Haley would never reconnect. That was despite his best efforts, trying to worm his way back into her life over the next 4 years. He even wrote a lengthy apology attempting to explain himself, admitting to a lot in the process. That includes admitting it was one-sided, as he was upset he never had the chance to be with her. Haley's accusations are easily the most convincing, with evidence for the others very lacking in comparison. I mean, that's without getting into all the different issues present in their individual testimonies. Regardless, the stories were all presented together, with the response being quite mixed. Obviously, this would warrant a response, with Max releasing Believe All Abusers on July 29th, 2022.
As far as debunking videos go, this one is actually quite good. Max starts off by showing his exes were conspiring to tear him down, being in the same group chat to orchestrate it. He talks about every single one of his accusers, providing different pieces of proof to show they're lying. With Paulina, he shows a litany of proof in text messages and screenshots showing a different side of the story. They show her trying to manipulate him by hurting herself. He also points out her obsessiveness, says, contrasting her own statements to show her story is basically one giant contradiction.
Here's Paulina's blood on her plane ticket to me after not seeing me for a while and telling me not to call the police. Here's Paulina threatening suicide. Here's Paulina threatening suicide. Here's Paulina threatening suicide. Here's Paulina threatening suicide. As you can see, I have been nothing but kind and sweet to her. And Paulina has continued and 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 continued to harass me, my friends, my team, and my family. And anytime we try to defend ourselves, she says that we are the ones harassing her. So, as you can see, I was not the abuser in our relationship. She was.
With Olivia's story, he doesn't even really bother debunking it with proof. The full 30-minute call from before she joined the group chat was put in the description.
I broke up with you literally because you were boring, to say the least. We never hung out. We never did anything. We never saw each other. Even though we lived together, we never did anything. I was bored as shit.
Why all the weird accusations, though?
Because I'm so tired of seeing these freaking 13-year-olds making fan edits. My ex-boyfriend, who made me go fucking crazy because he was great.
So you're being spiteful.
I'm being mad.
He brings up another ex of his, Sarah, who hadn't come out against him, although she was planning to at the time. He alleges she molested and abused him, showing a worrisome text message and an image of a bite mark as proof. Lucy was his first girlfriend, having met on Twitter back in 2016. With Lucy, he shows proof the way she presented her accusations was deceptive at best. For example, she claims that he groomed her when they met 2 months before she turned 18. He also shows proof she lied about her age at the time. While these other two cases did warrant being talked about, by far the most interesting part is the section about Haley. As noted, Haley's was the most convincing, not least of all because she provided quite a bit of proof. Max, in fact, confirms certain parts of the story, although he heavily pushes against a lot of the accusations.
Haley is not one of my exes. Haley has never abused me. Haley is a young woman that I fell for in high school and that I obsessed over during my time in the military. This is when I was 18. I made decisions that I obviously regret.
One of the key things he does is try to prove that he and Haley were a lot closer than ever implied. He confirms he was utterly obsessed with her, but suggests the reason for that is because she was effectively leading him on, as they would often do things that only couples tend to do, like cuddling, foot massages, flirting, etc.
True, you did not reciprocate them when your boyfriend was being nice to you, but when he wasn't being so nice to you, you would come to me for love and attention because that's all I gave you. We would talk on Skype almost every single night. You would invite me to come over to stargaze and talk in front of your grandma's house. We would go to the mall together and I would buy you things. We slept in the same bed together multiple times. We would cuddle. We would tickle each other. I would give you foot massages. We kissed each other on the cheek on rare occasions, and there was even one time you let me draw on your body with markers. But that's just my side.
He confirms the existence of the notebook, but claims the violent rhetoric had a very different context. Max says it was actually about someone he believed was abusive towards her.
Now, I don't know if you're purposefully lying or just misremembering this, so I made a promise to her that I would kill the man who she claimed had been abusing her during our friendship. I will not go into detail to respect her privacy, but the notebook was a gift. It was filled with raps I made about us two torturing and killing him. She said I was a psycho, but she liked that about me. And this is me performing one of the songs in that notebook a few years later.
Here to fix and solve all the issues by solving you.
I never released the song out of fear she was going to call the cops on me, which is something she would do.
According to Max, his code word, Fireman, was actually his rap pseudonym, with all of the violent writing in the notebook being lyrics against her alleged abuser, not her boyfriend.
He tells us Haley never tried to distance herself from him at this point, and would in fact indirectly encourage this behavior by saying she likes the fact he was a psycho. When we fast forward to her in college, he claims they'd been in contact, and she actually had told him where her dorm room was. We fast forward again to the day Haley claimed he trapped her at a hotel. He explains she had known beforehand his sister couldn't make it, and she knew they'd be at the hotel room alone. Haley agreed to it as long as he didn't try to F her. The visit was far more amiable, with the two of them cuddling, tickling each other, and doing all the sweet things that, a couple would do. They would also have a lengthy discussion about how she could try to get him fired from the military before he was shipped out to boot camp, which he was very eager to do, and they would meet to discuss this a few times afterwards. After he shipped out, Max claims they would continue regular correspondence, although the only proof he shows is a picture of him holding up his pinky to show he was making a pinky promise, as he says. At this point, Max tells us he hadn't actually been aware at all that Haley was dating Anthony, as whenever they hung out, she would claim they were just friends. He would eventually find out in boot camp, which is when he attempted to take his own life. However, his version of events once again differs, as he shows a supposed text from Anthony threatening Max to stay away from them in the aftermath of that video. In fact, he tells us the person who had saved his life was actually one of his army buddies. He also shows a supposed police report filed by Anthony and Haley. Since Max doesn't show much evidence of many of his and Haley's interactions, he decides to call in his sister as a sort of character witness, testifying that he and Haley were in fact incredibly close and casting more doubt on some of Haley's claims. As the conclusion rolls around, Max takes aim at what he considers his last unofficial accuser, Magnetar himself, taking time to make a rather egregious claim of his own. That's also while revealing his full name to the public.
Anthony Field, Haley's boyfriend, Magnetar on YouTube, the one who published this video on me.
The proof he shows is the testimony of a supposed victim who claims Anthony sent her nudes when she was underage. We also get testimony from Max's sister who affirms this anonymous account.
He graduated high school and he was an adult. He sent his genitals to a high schooler who was around 14 years old or 15 years old.
It should be noted that we don't actually get any tangible evidence. In spite of this, Max is very confident in calling this man a creep, leaking his full name in the process. The video was overall received very well, amassing nearly 1 million views. It was good enough for people to not only dismiss the accusations, but levy the ones against Anthony. That included several massive YouTubers who trusted Max as both a friend and a credible hunter.
And then he showed a clip of his sister saying that the guy that's that organized the video was sending like dick pics to 15-year-olds.
Me and my girlfriend were following the whole thing like crazy because it was like, me and my girlfriend were like, we know Max, so it's like, we just want to know this whole fucking thing. And me and her were blown away by the bombshell. We're like, what the like, how can this it's like, you gotta imagine, like, if you're the guy running these things and you have a possible history.
I mean, to be honest, like, looking at it from his perspective, Max is this guy who obviously has a chip on his shoulder and hates this dude, right? And he's making videos about catching pedophiles. He's just scared that one of the videos will be about him. So he's trying to discredit Max first.
We'll touch base with this later on because it would take a while for this video to be scrutinized at all. This is for the most part how the public left off the scandal back in 2022. Anthony gets destroyed and Max is still in a position of power. With the constant takedowns and apprehension to censorship, it shouldn't be surprising his income came largely outside of YouTube.
Max doesn't even try to monetize his videos anymore.
Max had a fan base of very loyal supporters, a massive number of whom signed up on his Patreon. This is where he would upload uncensored cuts of his videos, as well as other exclusive benefits. While it's a bit iffy to calculate his exact earnings at the time, given he hid both the number of patrons and the amount he was making, we can assume through third-party websites that he had well over 3,000 patrons at his peak. This was at an average of around $6 per patron. Of course, to maintain that loyalty, you would have to actually produce the content they were paying for. For a while, the only video he uploaded after Believe All Abusers was a song called Pray. It's pretty embarrassing, with the lyrics about how he wants creeps to perform oral on him. Behind the scenes, Max hyped this up by adding creators to a group chat, claiming he was about to cause a stir. But other than that, he was mostly inactive until the summer of 2023. On June 6, 2023, Max uploaded How This Little Girl Makes $150 billion every year. It was received poorly by fans, with many concluding it was just an advertisement for his Patreon. This was while asking for help reaching 10,000 patrons despite making little to no content.
If you want to see the full trailer, then you'll have to go to Patreon, or find it somewhere else on the internet. But in the meantime, please enjoy this censored version.
Those who did watch the uncensored versions were disturbed. Max's rather tasteless recreations were present throughout his catalog. In Wayne.exe, he even shows himself rescuing a victim from her captor in a Hotline Miami cosplay. But the new video contained scenes depicting CSA using an actor and an actress. The choice was controversial, inciting backlash among his patrons. One user, named A Mushroom, began arguing with Max, stating they couldn't support him in good conscience. Max doubled down, stating he didn't care about feelings, and asked for proof it was harmful. The back and forth continued, with Max forced to address it in a Patreon-only livestream. The cracks were beginning to show, but for now, people gave him the benefit of the doubt. Interestingly, one of the uncensored versions was titled You Can't Hurt Me Trailer. It was uploaded to Vimeo on an account called Striker Films. You see, Max began using the alias Max Striker, even changing his legal name to Max Salvatorio Striker. Salvatorio is an Italian name that means savior. He wrote in his petition, I believe changing my name will allow me to be more successful, as it is the image I'm striving for rather than the image I've been living with. Also, I just don't find the names Ronald or Harris very interesting. On October 22nd, Mama Max approached a number of online personalities regarding his next investigation. The video was about a dangerous predator Max intended to expose to the masses. His messages were bizarre, with vague threats implying they could be creeps. He invited them to watch his video ahead of time under the condition they signed a non-disclosure agreement. Tell your friends that this video serves as my response to those who spread disinformation for profit. It will also stand as a cautionary statement for any of you involved in illegal or unethical behavior targeting minors. I would invite you to use your platform responsibly. Disseminating this video could be an opportunity for you to contribute positively. Max seemed quite upset by the fact that he was, in his own mind, blown off by all of these creators. So much so that he would actually make it a focal point of his eventual expose. On October 27th, he released a video titled Brainwash Your Favorite Influencers, Trigger Warning. The main purpose of this video was supposedly to tell the story of Shelby Spencer Slayton and her accusations against a man named Camden Gerard Davis.
On March 18, 2016, Spencer, a 16-year-old girl from Wiley, Texas, mysteriously disappeared, lured by the illusion of joining a supernatural family as a vampire on some random corner of the internet. She actually found herself ensnared in a dangerous sex cult led by a child predator posing as a werewolf god.
He was apparently accused of kidnapping, assault, and attempted human trafficking.
The man had recruited hundreds of young children, subjecting them to sending CP, kidnapping, assault, and attempted trafficking. Almost 7 years later, Spencer and the other survivors shared their stories with me. This video serves as their scream for action against their perpetrator.
The rather glaring problem is that Max doesn't actually do much to expose the accused. Even though the video is supposed to be about victims of a cult, only 2 minutes of it actually explain their situation. No evidence is presented at all beyond the missing poster. Max spends more time comparing influencers to cult leaders and proposing bizarre hypotheticals.
Two extraterrestrial factions of the same primitive species are at war with each other. They are both guilty for spilling the blood of children. Based on the pattern among this species, who will win the war?
It primarily serves as a call to action to get the video in front of popular faces. Max once again calls out specific creators and invites them to talk about the topic. This list would include PewDiePie, Lex Friedman, Mr. Beast,
Joe Rogan,
Philip DeFranco, Ethan and Hila, Anthony Fantano, and of course Corpse Husband. Each individual is given a personalized plea, like appealing to PewDiePie's newfound fatherhood. Max requests to be on Lex Friedman's podcast, and I guess Joe Rogan as well.
Joseph Rogan.
He thanks Philip DeFranco for his coverage of Pick Aside YouTube. The message to Fantano is about how the song playing is a banger. The corpse section is a generic plea ignoring the stunt Max pulled a year ago. And after that, there's a rather off-kilter section of Spencer addressing Camden's mother, revealing her full name to the public. The video ends with a claim that Spencer is seeking legal action against Camden, as well as a call-out for all of his other supposed victims to come forward. He encourages viewers to use the hashtag #WeAreReal. Max then states all proceeds of the video will go to the victims, either to fund their legal battle or simply to help them in general. He also teases episode 1 of the You Can't Hurt Me podcast featuring Spencer. The video only netted about 100,000 views, a stark drop from his previous content. It received a mix of criticism and confusion, with most unable to follow what was even going on. This wasn't helped by the disclaimer stating it was fictionalized to some degree. The underperformance could also be blamed on the fact he rebranded his entire channel. Max renamed his channel to God Cult, with many fans assuming he was hacked. He wasn't, with the rebrand accompanied by this manifesto ranting about AI, geopolitical conflicts, and global warming. His Patreon indicates GODS stands for Guard Our Daughters and Sons. The description offers a bit more insight, implying he made the trailer without Spencer's permission. Dear Spencer, I was hesitant when you approached me to document your story. By nature, I'm an autistic experimental filmmaker. Are you kidding me, bro? Yeah, me too, actually, me too. I'm mad autistic, dude. I'm an autistic experimental filmmaker with a propensity for igniting movements that many deem controversial. I'm not a journalist by any stretch, but you believed in my ability to do justice to your narrative. As I listened more, I found my own traumatic past reflecting yours in some of the most heart-wrenching ways. To that end, you'll find a few surprises that we can discuss after you watch it. I hope I did not let you down. Your friend, Max. The comments were filled with valid criticism, causing them to be turned off entirely. The next day, the aforementioned podcast was posted to a channel owned by Spencer. It's a 5-hour interview in which Max asks Spencer about the cult at length. Now, just a heads up, I'm not going to talk much about those accusations today, but I do have a separate video about the cult on the way, which will investigate the allegations against Camden Gerard Davis in depth. The biggest takeaway most had is that, once again, there were no receipts. While most believed her story, the interview doesn't provide actionable evidence. In fact, it may have hurt the cause, as part of her testimony includes admitting to several crimes.
There was one time he did have me lure a girl, like, physically. We got an Uber and went and picked this girl up from, like, 30 minutes away from us, and she was, like, 13 or 14, and he kept trying to convince me to convince her to have sex with him.
There is one specific story I should bring up for reasons that'll become obvious later. The podcast isn't just Spencer's testimony, but 4 other survivors who provided written statements to be read out loud. The only other accuser without a pseudonym was Michaela Staton, referred to as Kai and Kayla. In her retelling, Spencer claims she left the cult after Camden allegedly SA'd Michaela behind a church.
Was there a specific moment that led to your decision to escape?
Kayla getting sexually assaulted by him. Like, literally in a ditch outside of a church.
Michaela reported this to the authorities, apparently providing photo evidence and a threatening conversation she had with him. In fact, she even claims Michaela had gotten pregnant, and when she told that to a detective, he outright ghosted her. Eventually, Michaela would allegedly have a miscarriage. The video offered a harrowing and far more complete picture of how severe these allegations were. But they were just that, allegations, and you need a lot more to call someone an evil cult leader. And most people simply didn't have the time or ability to piece together the story from a 5-hour podcast with no proof. It didn't get the attention Max desired, as the next day he went live with Spencer reacting to the video.
Influencers, even if they're not destructive, being inactive to injustice, I feel, is in of itself harmful. People don't care until it affects them. And I know this is shitty, but if they don't cover it, I'm going to make it affect them.
On November 11th, Max released This Is What Happened to Mama Max. The video starts with Max addressing the overall change in his content. He explains his journey from the early days of his channel back in 2016. Eventually, his productions turned more serious when he found his calling making predator hunting content. That's when Max gives a rather startling admission. He reveals that every single hunt video, while fundamentally based in reality, took place in a larger fictional universe where such behavior is normalized.
The Mama Max universe was a cautionary tale that takes place in a dystopian future where child predators have seized global power, exploiting the digital landscape to entrench their rule. Rising from the ashes of a society that failed to protect its most vulnerable, the children emerged, a covert network of vigilantes inspired by the style of Hotline Miami. Once victims, they are now hunters of the monsters who hurt children.
Amusingly, he describes this as too obtuse for YouTube, complaining it led to a steep drop in viewership. He even goes on to say the YouTube audience may not be ready for this kind of content. On that note, he also defends himself from accusations of clout chasing by saying that if he really wanted to get views, he'd picked a terrible grift for YouTube. He does not bring up his Patreon numbers, mind you, which, while diminished at this point, was still netting him up to $9 grand a month. He then responds to comments that call him either a grifter or point out he wasn't treating the situation seriously enough. For example, this is his response to a user accusing him of using the topic as window dressing to boost his relevancy.
Comparing crucial issues like child abuse, human trafficking, and pedophilia as window dressing for YouTube relevancy says far more about you than you realize. Your choice to overlook these details and instead diminish this work is a telling revelation of your own character.
For the most part, this is the general stance he takes throughout the video, using the seriousness of the topic as a shield from any and all criticism. He defends the overt flashiness by saying it was the only way he thought it could get some attention. He argues that doing things the regular way, by showing all the facts, simply wasn't enough. It necessitated cult-like tactics to get people to connect with the message. This is also how he justifies calling out specific YouTubers. Max argues that if they had any sort of moral backbone, they would push his video unconditionally. He shames all the YouTubers he reached out to in private, albeit with the courtesy to not name anyone in particular. But that was very short-lived, as Max became agitated behind the scenes.
Max, have you personally reached out to any YouTubers about this? Yes, I have reached out to multiple. They are all apprehensive. I don't want to say I don't blame them. I think the YouTubers I reached out to should be covering the story regardless, because it could make a huge impact and potentially save children's lives. And I've made that clear with them, but they are apprehensive. My current solution is make the follow-up video and discuss it further in a way that's more accessible. Talk to Charlie. Deadmau5, I did talk to Charlie. I will still be talking to him.
This can be seen in his DMs to Charlie, which he leaked in his next video. The first shown is dated October 23rd. It seems Charlie turned him down, stating he was moving away from React content. Max acknowledges this before adding him to a group chat. There is absolutely no expectation for you to react or cover the video. Max bothers him for several days, begging him to review the video. The brainwashing vid is released on October 27th. Then on November 6th, Max tags everyone stating the video didn't meet expectations and they didn't make enough to start a full legal suit. I've sent the survivors my own income to hopefully make up for this. Max also sends Charlie a DM asking for a 15-minute call. Before long, he was shaming them for their silence to get them to attend his meetings.
Hello, my name is Max Striker. I'm a filmmaker dedicated to empowering children. You are invited to a mass call between many high-profile YouTubers and the survivors of a destructive sex cult that has victimized hundreds of children.
The idea Max didn't expect them to cover the story was a lie, evident by a DM he sent to Nicholas Diorio around the same time. Your response, or lack thereof, will not go unnoticed. We are determined to be heard, and we hope to count you among those who stand for what is right. Max was gearing up for his next big stunt, which came just 4 days after his last. It was on November 25th, 2023, that Max uploaded, "This is the cancellation of all time, Penguin Zero, #WeAreReal." In addition to the title, the thumbnail put Charlie front and center. The video begins with Max helpfully explaining it was clickbait for another call to action. He follows this with a brief segment mocking the outrage surrounding Sniper Wolf and juxtaposing it against what he deems a far more serious issue. While Max claims it isn't a call-out, he does levy several criticisms against Charlie. Footage of his channel plays in the background while Max rants about the apathy of creators. There's even a section where he shows all of their DMs before looking down solemnly as the survivors flash on screen. This is all preceded by a quote stating his silence would lead to the triumph of evil.
The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing.
Following this montage, Max addresses Charlie directly while claiming he's not trying to corner him. This is largely what he spends the last 10 minutes discussing, once again distracting from what he supposedly cared about.
Charlie, I hold on to the hope that you'll act in accordance with the integrity and goodness I've always known you to possess. I realize that centering this part of the video around you might feel imposing, and for that I extend my sincere apologies. To offer a gesture of goodwill, here are my dogs, hoping it brings a moment of joy amidst these heavy topics.
Max finally provides evidence in this video, but they're spliced in between the borderline seizure-inducing edits and flash on screen for only a second. They're also completely without context. The montage includes a picture of Spencer and Camden together, as well as some seemingly innocuous posts. They do very little to further our understanding of the case, but hey, at least it's something, I guess. He also plays a video with the survivors, including both Spencer and Michaela.
My name is Spencer, and I am a survivor of Camden Gerard Davis, the leader of a destructive cult that has victimized hundreds of minors. This video...
I'll focus up for a sec. Please, man. Please be nice. Cool.
Is our screen for action.
The video drags on for a while, adding really nothing worth of substance to the overall investigation. Pretty much the universal impression from creators and viewers alike was that it was just another call for attention. In the end, this video was received the worst, with an overwhelmingly negative comment section. Everyone from CSA victims to supposed lawyers came out of the woodwork to criticize him, pointing out the over-reliance on flowery prose and the obvious attempt at emotionally blackmailing Charlie. This continues even into the description where he admits to using ChatGPT-4 and cult psychology. Whatever goodwill he had from over the years was quickly evaporating, as even his own fans were skeptical. I mean, we're a whole 3 videos in with over 50 minutes of content, and Max had still done absolutely nothing to explain the whole story or provide actionable proof. The video inevitably reached Charlie, who was asked on stream to address the situation. He was not impressed, calling the move slimy and giving a brief explanation of why he stopped replying in the first place.
We talked like a month ago about like what he was working on in his investigation, and then apparently when I had COVID, he messaged me a couple times and I never saw it, and now he's taken that as me ghosting him and ignoring his very important mission, and it really rubs me the wrong way. He jumping to the most extreme possible explanation for me not seeing it, which is really fucking cringe. I had COVID, and I barely used Discord in the first place. It was a miracle I ever even saw his message to begin with, and then I spent 12 days not doing anything online in bed, and during that time apparently it changed his whole framing of the video in order to make it like a Trojan horse of cancel critical because he didn't respond to my messages.
After getting backlash over the title and thumbnail, Max renamed it Reacting to the Reactions of SS Sniper Wolf's Actions. But even though the criticism was getting harsher, he once again doubled down on his method of investigation. On the 26th, Max fired up a live stream titled Fight Me to argue with his chat in the comment section. Most of the criticism centered around his targeting of Charlie, as well as his dismissal of the Sniper Wolf drama. Bear in mind, she had just doxed and went to the house of another YouTuber. He angrily clarifies that while this was in fact important, in comparison to trafficking around the world, it should hardly be a blip on the radar.
And people are still bringing it to, oh, but drama. Oh, but Charlie harassment. Oh, but Sniper Wolf, let's defend the Sniper Wolf mass coverage. How about we take it to human trafficking and global child exploitation, guys? How's that sound?
This is largely what the stream boils down to, without much in the way of substance. Max continues to insist on the importance of his mission, while dismissing any idea he wasn't going about it correctly. He went live again a few days later, this time with Spencer. On this stream, there was a little more of a dialogue going on, with people coming in and out to voice their criticism. He speaks to a YouTuber named Lyrix, who grills him on trying to guilt-trip Charlie into speaking out. Max defends himself by claiming it wasn't his intent, and that he only singled him out because he likes him.
I think you're trying to force him in a sense, or try to like use this moral superiority, the guilt, like to guilt-trip him into covering it at this point.
At least I have your eyes, though.
Lyrix also mocks aspects of Spencer's story to her face, like the fact that she sincerely believed Camden's supernatural image.
Wait, so what did he convince you to be?
He convinced me that I was a vampire, and then later on, after he quote-unquote broke up with me, I was a hybrid of a werewolf and a vampire.
Oh, hybrid. Okay. You know, I saw your video. You put on a pretty convincing performance. You know, with those like fake teeth and everything. Like he had me sold. I probably would have got him too. He could have got me if he would have just like had his eyes on the little boys. You know.
While he doesn't provide good answers, Max is at least pretty amicable. He has a chat with Mudahar, and in fairness, seems receptive to his criticism.
When you present a case well, when you tell them exactly the
Wait. Oh, nice.